Jason Rice here for another LotParty episode, and here at the Lotpop headquarters I actually got to have Mike Cavanaugh from MaxDigital come visit us. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you for coming in, man. You know, we've been working with some of the stores that have MaxDigital, and it's been a great relationship. But you know, one of the things I first wanted to start out with, because we're going to try to make this short, less than 10 minutes, I wanted to go over, get some good information back to these dealers. So what do you think is one of the biggest challenges dealers are running into right now, managing their used car inventory?
Right. So I mean, we hear it all the time is sourcing inventory, right? And where do I find cars, right, that work really well for my customers, my market, what's going to sell fast. So
yeah,
that's probably the number one thing that we're hearing about right now.
So what are you guys doing to help those dealers with that kind of struggle? Because yeah, that's endless.
No, it's a good question. So interestingly enough, we're taking a little bit different approach. You know, I think there's a lot of tools in the market that help dealers find these cars at the auction. Where do I go to the auction to buy these cars? But the margin compression that's going on, you know, auction fees are so high. I've been in the car business since I was a little kid, so you go back 30 years and auction fees are, and they're probably 10 times what they were then now.
Yeah.
So when you factor in auction fees and transportation, you know, dealers are trying to find, you know, how do I buy cars someplace different? And really, you know, if you look at CarMax, you look at Cavanaugh, what these guys are doing and how much money they spend marketing to consumers.
Yeah.
We're trying to help dealers get this inventory from trade-ins or, you know, curb purchases. You know, how do we help them get these cars? Because it's a lot lower acquisition cost.
Yeah, and that's the trick. You know, when we're looking at dealers' inventory, we try to separate those trades versus purchases and look at how they own them from the curb versus the lane. And it always seems to be we're owning them higher at the lane. And you know, a lot of dealers, I try to get them to maybe step up on more in trades, but you always hear, well, we never miss a car deal on a trade-in, right? But you do consistently. We do kind of see those type of numbers that they do end up owning those cars more at the curb or at the lane, and it could just be ego thing, you know, not letting the other guy beat you out on getting that car and stuff. But definitely that, and then you know, service is another thing I think dealers don't tap into a lot, is working that service lane. You were talking to me earlier about using the tool to help with that. What are you guys doing there?
Yeah, so interesting story. So I was with the dealer group, pretty big dealer group down in South Texas last week, and we were talking about implementing a new tool of ours called Max My Trade in the service drive. And so this is really a collaborative appraisal tool that allows like a service advisor or a salesperson to go through and score out a car on an iPad or on their phone or on the desktop and walk through, and most of the time this is used on an iPad. And in the service drive, you know, imagine when a customer comes in, they're checking in their car, and just like you would do when you're renting a car, right? You go through and you say, hey, look, before we take this into service, I want to look at a couple things with you. Let's take a look at the exterior of the vehicle, and you know, are there any dents, scratches, anything like that? Okay, great. How would you rate your exterior overall, 1 through 10? 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. That's probably a 7. You know, I've got a scratch here, a bump here. Okay, before we bring this into service, I also want to make sure that you don't have anything valuable in the car. Let's take a look through the interior, make sure that there's nothing, you know, out of place or ripped. You got everything you need. Okay, how would you rate the interior car? You know, I smoked in here, there's a burn hole, that's a 6. Okay, great. Let's go through here and, you know, we'll rate your car a 6. So then what happens is all of the information that you get from the customer, and it could be 5 questions, 10 questions, whatever you want it to be, it gets sent to your used car director, your used car manager in your IMS, and lets them know there's an appraisal waiting, and it'll automatically tell them, is this a green light car, yellow light car, red light car? And that means, you know, green light car, was this a car we sold fast and made a lot of money on? Yellow light car is this kind of core inventory, but it's not that. And then red is this high mileage car, or a car we typically don't sell fast and we don't make a lot of money on.
Yeah.
So you can think, if you're a busy service facility, if if your shop's turning a lot of wrenches and moving a lot of cars through, you might see 1,000+ cars a month through there. If you're looking at just the green light cars, you're going to be able to find a lot of vehicles that work really well, and then flip those over to sales as well. You and I were talking about that as, man, I mean, you know, that's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, you know, as giving a dealer a tip, you know, I wouldn't set it up as the service writer or a salesman, hey, can we look at your car, appraise it to see if it's, you know, we're interested in it to purchase it? Because I think customers are going to get defensive there. They're going to say, no, you know, I don't want to be sold. I'm just coming in for service. But yeah, if you just approach it as, hey, folks, we'd like to make sure that we return the same car to you, make sure there's no damage in between, transferring between our service department. Can you walk with me real quick? We just do a service walk and make sure your car is the same way when we return it. I was jokingly saying, so if you got bad tires now, we'll give you the car back with bad tires unless you want to replace them. So yeah, I mean, do something like that. If you're going to do this, I think you're going to be more successful because then the customer's guard's down. And then at that point in time, as they're sitting in the service lane or whatever, you can approach them and say, hey, I got some news for you. You know, we got your car back in service, but we recognized, you know, this is a type of vehicle that we need a lot of, and it's in really good condition, like you told me. And my manager came up with some numbers if you're interested in hearing what you might be worth, and then if you wanted to trade it, that kind of approach. And you have dealers doing that kind better now? And
yeah, definitely. Working. And I got to tell you, you know, the GM of one of the stores in that group that I was talking about last week is he said, look, I'm going to pay my service advisors, you know, $200 a car for every car they take in. You know, one, it's hard to find good people in service, right, and keep them. So I can give these guys a pay raise by not doing much else other than, you know, implementing this new process a little bit. Yeah. So I can help them make more money, and I help bring in more used car inventory that I'm missing, and then hopefully convert some of these into new car sales as well. So it's just getting everybody to work together and using, you know, some really inexpensive technology to kind of bridge that gap. Which
and it's a win-win, like you say. Auction fees are up there, and then a lot of guys, and not too many use them as now, but guys are using wholesalers and paying the wholesaler $200 to buy them car on top of the fee and the transportation. So just doing that and not having fees and not paying somebody else to buy it. So no, definitely worth it.
And in many cases, this is a car that might have been serviced at your facility for a long time, so you know how well this car has been taken care of. You're not taking a gamble on something that you're buying from an auction, you know, 500, 600 miles away.
You know, I like talking about this stuff because a lot of times when I do video tips and stuff or things that we work with on stores, it's a lot of what I call the front end stuff. You know, the photos, the descriptions, their pricing, we can help them with that stuff. But where our hands are tied is, you know, we're not in their service department. We're not the appraiser. We're not the guy with the checkbook at the lane helping them buy cars. We just deal with the now what. So now you own this, now what we want, what are we going to do with it? So what are the other things as far as some of this back end stuff that we could talk about, like purchases or auctions and appraisal stuff? Is there certain things that you guys are focused on? Because I came into this year thinking, okay guys, I think there's two areas dealers had to work on. Certified, because that's growing and it's very valuable for a franchise dealer to be able to use that platform as an intro to new cars and an alternative to new cars as those prices and stuff are hurting. And then obviously trade or appraisals, I should say, not trades, but obviously trades and purchases and appraisals to maximize that process. You know, I want to make sure every appraisal is getting in the system. I need to know how many I've done, how many I've taken in, do I hit them heavy or light, and if I'm missing some, who is it? Who's appraising them and why am I missing them? We can talk to dealers about that, but in the trenches and utilizing the tool and willing to pay for it, it's up to them. But what is MaxDigital on that and helping in any of that we just...
You know, I think kind of along the lines of the topic that we were talking about there, and this is why I really like this approach in the service drive as well, is that typically a lot of cars that you're servicing are cars that are 1, 2, maybe 3-year-old cars that are of your franchise, right? So perfect cars that you can certify and bring in. Yeah. So I think it's getting these processes to work in tandem and trying to figure out a way that, you know, how do I keep this constant cycle going if, you know, I want to kind of pull from my farm team of inventory, so to speak, that's out there and bring them up to create this new certified inventory that's going to be likely where the most profit's at. I've got a friend of mine that runs a very successful store in Washington, D.C. that's one of the, you know, top Lexus certified dealers in the country. And you know, he'd be a good guy to talk to about certified because I don't see anybody else doing it better than him right now.
Yeah, and that's, you know, talking about farming, you know, it's like when you sell a car, it's just planting the seed. Everybody thinks it's done then. Yeah, we should follow up trying to get them in the door, but you're really just planting the seed for it to grow into other deals. And one of the things that we're trying to do is what I call it like a family tree or the branch out. When you sell a car, how many other opportunities? Did I get F&I? Did I get a trade? How much did I get on that trade? And then I sold that trade. And there's a whole family tree, you know, happening. So you're really just planting seed when you make the sale and getting them back into service, one, just to make the service revenue, but two, and maybe justify a loss or whatever you had to do, but two, eventually getting those trade-ins. Right. And so I think lease is obviously a big opportunity to do that too, get those leases going, and then that way they're coming back in 3 years, you get the first shot. And if you manage those two things, you shouldn't have to go to the auction too often.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just, I think the industry as a whole has been so focused on how do I get better at buying cars from the auction, you know? Yeah. I used to be the COO of a dealer group that had 28 stores in, you know, 9 states across the country, and I was buying thousands of cars a month at the auction. I mean, we probably bid on 10,000 plus cars a month to get the inventory that we needed. It was nuts, right? Yeah. If we had more franchise stores like a lot of guys out there do, where we could get all of this, you know, all of these trade-ins, I mean, it would have made life 20 times easier for us.
Yeah,
So,
buying cars at the auction, you're just dealing with the symptom, not the problem. The problem is sourcing cars. Now, how else can I do it? And again, I think leasing, now it's not an instant gratification. That's the bad thing. A lot of people don't see the benefits. You got to wait 3-4 years before these leases terminate, but usually you're going to get the first shot. And so I think leasing, certified, and then working those trades. And again, you do that, you should have more control of what you're buying, how you're buying it. You don't have to complain about, I can't find cars anywhere. And buying off the street, trying to drive those people coming in. But we're going to wrap this up. Again, we want to make it quick. I think this is great. Thanks again
awesome.
for coming in, and thanks for this video. And stay tuned for any of our other lot parties. Go to YouTube. We got Lotpop Inc. There's 170 something tips on there. So hopefully this was helpful. Not too commercialized or anything like that. Just give you some good information to help your store. Thanks.